Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week we are looking at criminal justice in the capital city. Police are making arrests, but criminal justice doesn't end there. We'll take you into the court system with Hinds County District Attorney Jody Owens. How is his office tackling violent crime in Jackson? And how is the federal consent decree impacting prosecutions? What's being done to make the court system just, swift, and effective? Questions for the DA on today's Mississippi Insight. We welcome Jody Owens to our studio. He was sworn into office in January of 2020 as Hinds County District Attorney, and before that he was a managing attorney at the Mississippi office of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Jody Owens, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about first. You won election in 2019 and part of the platform of tackling violent crime in Hinds County. Since then, the city of Jackson has continued to see a high level of deadly violence, at least 60 homicides as we record this conversation on Thursday afternoon. Begin by telling us your observations on the ground level of criminal prosecutions right now. Where do we stand?
All right, I think that we have been in office now for almost 17 months. And first year, March 2020, COVID hit. And what we saw is a complete shutdown of the court system. Obviously, public health crisis, not just in Mississippi, but throughout the world, stopped the flow of jury trials. It stopped schools, right? When we saw schools stop, we saw kids not having anything constructive to do. It limited the services that were provided as life as we knew it. And because of that, I think it was kind of a box that exploded. And what we saw is the highest number of fatalities that the city has seen in more than 2 decades. And this year, I think we're still seeing some of those effects. We are fixing things every day. For example, we have had probably at least 5 jury trials in the last 2 weeks. We're seeing the courts open up. We're seeing people show up for jury duty, which was not happening during COVID for the obvious reasons. And I think we're on a path forward now that society is getting back to normal.
Are we seeing more crimes in now because of COVID than we saw pre-COVID?
Well, you know,
is that what you're saying?
And that's really the million-dollar question that we want to know in Mississippi and in Jackson and throughout the nation. Why are we seeing so much crime and what are the factors? And I continue to try to educate the public that there are tons of factors that contribute to crime. One, we do know that we have a mental health crisis in Mississippi as opposed to people getting treated for mental health. Instead of getting medical treatment, they're getting criminal treatment. We also know in Jackson we have a lack of socioeconomic opportunities for people. Jobs help to eliminate the sub-drug culture that we see, and drugs generally can lead to a high level of crime. We also have challenges of the heart. We have a society now that we're seeing people not being able to deal with disputes calmly and collectively. Instead, a lot of domestic violence disputes of young people in particular are leading to death and mayhem in our communities. And I mean something as simple as bullying or jawing back and forth on social media can turn violent very relatively quickly. We also know that young folks in particular have too much access to weapons and high-powered weapons at that. And that's just a few of the issues that we're seeing that are bringing us to this point of desperation and violence in our city. When we see people getting killed time and time again at gas stations, when we see young people shooting into cars, we're seeing kind of a crisis of conscience that we're trying to really bring back. Now, from a district attorney's perspective, whoever arrests anybody in the Hinds County, whether it be Edwards or Raymond or JPD, of course, or Hinds County Sheriff's Office, they bring those cases to us. And our job is to prosecute those people to the full extent of the law. Now, I ran on the platform of smart justice, which we've been able to achieve in 2020. We're diverting as many nonviolent offenders from the system as we can. But with this influx of violence, 147 murders last year in our county, 60 as of today, those are a lot of murder cases to prosecute. And our goal is to make sure people know that life in Hinds County is worth the same in Rankin and Madison County. So you're not getting a cakewalk. If we can convict you to the fullest extent of the law, we will do that. In many instances, what we've seen is that we're revoking tons of bonds. When you're out on parole in our community, your bond will be revoked if you commit another crime that's eligible by penalty of 5 years and a day. So we're constantly revoking bonds. One of the questions that you opened up with was, how is the consent decree affecting criminal justice? Well, the answer is a lot. We have certain limitations about who we can hold and how in our jail and our prison system, and we have a number of violent people there. When COVID first hit our community, we worked with the judges, the public defender's office to ensure that people who were light risk for our community, that they could be released because we didn't want a public health crisis in the prison because we know by default they're not as sanitary or safe as other places. However, at this point in time, there are a lot of violent people in the prison. So our goal is to prosecute them as efficiently as possible. Here in Hinds County, we have 4 circuit court judges: Judge Tommy Green, Judge Faye Peterson, Judge Adrian Wooten, and Judge Winston Kidd. And those judges, are just 4. That's a significant, small group of people to have a trial for all of the defendants that we have in Hinds County. Our office has more than 2,000 cases, and that's a lot for us to do. We can't try ourselves out of this problem, so a lot of cases are plead, some are tried, and we try to work the resolution to the extent to keep this community safe.
Wasn't there a point that the legislature was trying to help you get some of those case law off the books by adding some extra judges?
Well, in 2014, a majority of the district attorneys in Hinds County offices, a majority of the district attorney offices in the state got more resources, where Hinds County did not. Now, I can't explain why that didn't happen. So in 2020 legislative session and in 2021 legislative session, our office has worked with the Hinds County delegation, with the governor, with the lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the House to get more resources so we can fix this issue of crime. This year, there was a small allocation of additional one-time resources, but we do need more resources. Our goal as the district attorney's office is to show the citizens and the state leadership that if you help us, we can give you a good return on your money, because we all know that Jackson is the capital of the state, and so goes Jackson, so goes the rest of the state. The problems that Jackson faces will not just stay in Jackson. Either we will fix them as a community, or they will go to the outskirts and they can completely take over. So our challenge is to make sure we're sending the message, like all places in the state of Mississippi. People want to feel safe, and we're not going to tolerate senseless crime. And that's what we think we're doing. We didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take some time to correct this path where we are. But we've seen some truly significant results so far. We've seen that the public is holding people accountable. Our office tried a case last week, a very high-profile case. One of the defendants involved in the Lil Lonnie murder. A jury returned a verdict of guilty for first-degree murder, and that's one of many. Just 2 months before then, our office tried a case regarding the death of Mr. Singh, who owned the gas station on Raymond Road and Terry Road, and the jury returned a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. People are paying the ultimate price of their freedom if they're going to take someone's life. And if we continue to do that, we would send a message that we're not tolerating that. People who are my parents' age, who are senior citizens, want to be safe in their retirement, and they love this community, and they deserve that, and that's what we hope to deliver.
We'll be right back. Well, you talked about the catching of suspects by Jackson police. We had Mayor Lumumba on this show last month, and he talked about that. But he also said that so many times that these are repeat offenders, and that they're constantly rearresting the same people over and over again. And that's part of the problem that the city is facing, that JPD is facing. What do you say about that when the mayor said that they're constantly having to rearrest the same people who are committing the crimes?
Well, I think the question is what we're arresting them for. Now, currently, because of the consent decree, we cannot hold people in the Hinds County Raymond Detention Center for misdemeanors, right? So there's a lot of these things that are nuisance crimes in our neighborhoods. For example, drag racing, right? We're seeing more and more of that. I think that was some of the high-profile things that can lead to other things. I think we have to have more respect for our community and our streets. We're not seeing the felons that are being arrested and arrested again, because once you're arrested, you're not eligible for parole if you have another case pending. And we are indicting people as habituals as necessary, which means the penalty is so much greater. But I think the mayor has correctly identified that we're not able to reach young people who are making these small things that don't make to the felony level, and we have to do a better job there.
You campaigned when you ran out as a approach for criminal justice, as a part of your campaign was focused on decarceration or curbing mass incarceration. Are you satisfied with what you're doing right now, or are you making that happen, or where do you stand with your campaign promise?
And I think that's what's important for people to realize. You know, during our campaign, we identified that we couldn't prosecute ourselves solely to a safer community. We had to have programs in place to do more. COVID really restricted that first year of 2020. We have a significant diversion program right now that we've, in the year 2020, I believe we tripled the number of people we kept out of the criminal justice system. Because nobody wins when we take fathers and brothers out of the community that are able to work and able to be in the household and be productive and help raise families. I mean, when you take the evolution of families and you destroy the family structure, you can't really have, you wonder, one of the statistics, Byron, that I focus on is that it's interesting that the number of kids who end up incarcerated, whose parents were incarcerated. Now, to some people, you would just assume, why? Well, the question is that, you know, kids need structure, they need discipline, they need support, and when you take an element of that from them, you're setting them up to fail. So when we talk about reducing the cycle of repeat families going into prisons and jails, part of that is identifying that we have to have ways to give people second chances. So this is what we're doing here in Hinds County. We have a diversion program for first-time nonviolent offenders that will allow them to be drug tested once a month, to make sure they have a job and have some level of accountability to pay the restitution if it's a smaller property crime, to make sure people are made whole. Secondly, in instances where they are actually addicted to drugs, we have a drug court program, which also is hoping that we can get them the services, because addiction is a mental health and medical issue. It's not a criminal issue. And what people do when they're high and on drugs, oftentimes they don't remember, they can't be held accountable for it, and we have to get those people help to the extent we can, particularly those lower level offenders, before they do something more serious. We're working with certain members of the group to come up with a veterans court. We think that's so critical, and we want to identify people earlier on. One of the campaign goals we had originally before COVID hit, and the day I was sworn in, I had a lunch with about 25 to 30 members of the clergy. My late uncle, Charles Watson, helped me put that together, who recently passed. And the goal was involving the churches more into the community. We have so many churches with so much expertise and want to volunteer, but they couldn't go to the jails or prison during the COVID, you know, for the obvious reasons. We want to engage the clergy community, the faith-based community, into the problem. The way I look at it, there's so many different people that are going to have to step up to the plate, and we all have to do our part. And whether it be mentorship programs, whether it be jobs for youth who have nothing to do, whether it be summer camps, basketball. When I was 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you know, Boys and Girls Club, you know, there was so much stuff to do in camps. We don't have that right now. So hopefully we can get back to doing that, and I think that will help us with the larger issue, because it's not just prosecution. Make no mistake, there are violent people that we have to prosecute and take off of our streets because they have done harm to people that's unimaginable, and the victims deserve knowing that we care as a community. But there's so many people before they get to that point that we have to reach. And that's why I always look at the analogy of the ditch. How do you stop digging? How are you just not throwing everybody away? And I think we're doing that. That's why we have to really get a focus on this drug issue. Historically in this country, we saw the difference between crack cocaine and just powdered crack versus rocks, and how they put a generation of men and women in prison and in jails. Well, my view on this is simple, and this is what I've learned as a civil rights lawyer. Mississippi, over the last 10, 20 years, has always been in top 5 in the United States in incarceration. So either you believe that we have the worst people, or one of the top 5 worst people in the United States, which nobody believes and no proud Mississippian should believe, or you believe we've gotten it wrong about how we're prosecuting and what we're doing. And that's what we have sought to do. I think you can do both. You be smart about how you prosecute, but also be firm. And that's what we're hoping that the public will see by the end of our first term. We wish we could wave the magic wand, but the COVID beat us to it. But we're seeing significant improvements on who we're prosecuting and why, focusing primarily on the violent offenders who have taken the life of someone else. We want them out of our jails, we want them in Mississippi Department of Corrections custody, and we'll focus on the people that we can perhaps rehabilitate before they get to that point.
For those who are frustrated by all the crime, are you confident or are you hopeful that things will get better and that Jackson will be a safer city?
Absolutely. I'm confident because I see daily how hard people are working. I see all through the night when my phone's going off and I'm getting emails about people stopping and responding to crime. And oftentimes what I see, even when the most violent crimes occur, is suspect captured. U.S. Marshals caught suspect, task force working together. So that makes me confident. I'm hopeful because I know how hard our team is working to come up with solutions. I mean, one of the things we did when we first got in office is create partnerships that perhaps were not as robust as they needed to be. We met with the U.S. Marshals, we met with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney. I'm working with the U.S. Attorney's Office weekly. My friend Chris Wansley there and Darren LaMarca, who's currently the acting U.S. Attorney, and whoever the next U.S. Attorney might be, we realize that we have to work together. And you have to be hopeful when you realize that at some point in time, light is coming. If I'm prosecuting people and they're arresting people, at some point in time, people get to think they can't repeat offenders no more. If they are present and if schools are working, I mean, we had a year of no school, of distant learning in a community that wasn't prepared for that. There, a pandemic. I'm hopeful that one won't come back. And I think that if the services are open, our communities will have something more productive to do. If you give people stuff to do, whether it's in classrooms, whether it's in jails, whether it's in prisons, you have to keep people busy with something to do. And I'm hopeful and confident that in years to come, we will be able to steer the ship the right direction.
District Attorney Jody Owens, Hinds County, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right,
see you next
appreciate
time.
talking
Thank
to
you.
After the break, we'll wrap up a busy week at the polls with municipal general elections across the state. You're watching Mississippi Insight only on 12 News. Mississippi Secretary of State Michael Watson says voter turnout at Tuesday's municipal general election was, quote, less than ideal. Just over 17% of Jackson voters went to the polls. Many towns saw even lower turnout. We spoke with Mississippi Votes, a nonpartisan group that helps people register to vote. They say it's unfortunate that turnout for local elections is so much lower than it is for national ones.
Local elections, affects local change, and so when you come and you vote in your local elections, you have real people on the scenes that are going to be, fixing your roads. It's going to be your education. It's going to be your health care, and so local elections are honestly more important.
Mississippi broke voter turnout records in last year's presidential elections, according to our reporting partners at Mississippi Today. Perhaps the most watched race for mayor of Jackson, where Chokwe Angela Lumumba won re-election against 4 opponents. 12 News' Kayla Thompson tells us about the mayor's priorities in his second term.
One city, one aim, one destiny. One city, one aim, one destiny.
4 more years for Mayor Chokwe Angela Lumumba, but now people hope crime and infrastructure are at the top of his list to work on, something he pledges will be better in his second term.
And I pledge to you, not only will we rebuild our water treatment facility so that you have sustainable, dependable, and equitable water, but we're going to rebuild this infrastructure from top to bottom. And we're going to do it not because you have an amazing mayor, but because you are an amazing people, and we're going to work together in order to make it happen.
The mayor also pledges to create a safer Jackson and support the people of the community.
We have to dig a little deeper to find out how we also supplement our efforts to continue to build our police department, to continue to give tools towards policing, and look at tools that get to the root causes of the problems in which we suffer from. How do we provide more mental health support? How do we provide more economic support? How do we provide alternatives for young people?
But he's not trying to do things alone. The mayor says he's relying on the people of Jackson to work with city leaders to provide services and solutions.
I need them to give me innovative suggestions so that we can build on this city. I need them to be there at the table when we're fighting over budget so that they understand that a budget is a moral document and what we fund reflects what our values are as a city and as a community.
Mayor Chokwe Angela Lumumba is the first mayor in 2 decades to win re-election consecutively.
I invite those that have felt.
Well, the mayor of Hattiesburg also won re-election Tuesday. Former Republican Toby Barker ran again as an independent. He drew 85% of the vote to overcome Democratic challenger Lakeela White. In Canton, Democratic Mayor William Truly beat off a challenge by Republican Chip Matthews, but Pelahatchie will get a new mayor. Republican Carl Van Horn defeated incumbent Rashada Harper Beecham. Incumbent mayors also won re-election in Brandon and Clinton. You can find many more election results and comments from the candidates at our website, WJTV.com. And we'll be right back. Big thanks to Hinds County District Attorney Jody Owens for joining us this week. We've also invited a representative from the county's Public Defender's Office to talk about crime and justice. We hope to bring that interview on next Sunday's Mississippi Insight. Until then, I'm Byron Brown. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.